let's get to the show. Don Lemon, he went to Minneapolis to, as he said, report on what's happening with ICE and the immigration efforts and the protests and all the craziness that is going on in Minneapolis, as you already know. And if you don't know, then you're about to know, right? So he posted not yesterday, or maybe like 2 days ago, he posted almost a 7-hour live stream. Now, of course, there's no way I'm going to sit down and watch a 7-hour Don Lemon live stream. That's just not in my nature. But I did watch at least the first 2 hours. And let me just tell you, 2 hours is a lot of time. So I'm surprised I even watched that much of it. But I watched the first 2 hours and it did give me a lot of context. And I'm very grateful and appreciative that I did sit down and watch those 2 hours. Because here's the thing. A lot of people are saying that, Don was the individual who set this up and that he organized it. I don't know if that's true or not, but based on what I watched, he wasn't the individual who actually organized it, although he did have previous information that it was going to happen. So he knew it was going to happen because he was plugged into the group that, went into the church, which is very interesting. Now, I want to start the video right here. So at this point in time, here's what's going to happen. The group, I don't know what they go by, but in Minneapolis, they've identified that a pastor is employed to some extent by ICE. Now, this is according to their own independent research. They've identified that a pastor is employed by ICE. They pull up to his church in the snow. They pull up to his church. I think they probably had at least 20 people, anywhere from like 20, 25 people, maybe, a little more, a little less. And initially, they all went into the church and they sat down like normal. But then probably 10 minutes after they got there, their leader stood up and interrupted the service. And then all chaos, ensued. So I'm going to start in the middle of the chaos. So they've already gone into the church. They've already shut down the service. This is the middle of the chaos. And I want you to listen to what the leader said as to why they pulled up. And then I want you to listen to just some of the reactions and some of the chaos of the people. All right?
Yes, what did you tell them? I told that David Easterwood is a pastor here, and he also serves as the director of the field office for ICE in St. Paul. How? David Easterwood.
Are you sure that he's a...
Yes, City's church, yes. And that's why we're here, demanding justice for Renee Good and letting them know that this will not stand. They cannot pretend to be a house of God while harboring someone who is directing ICE agents to wreak havoc upon our community and who killed Renee Good, who almost killed a 6-month-old baby. Enough is enough. I am a reverend on top of being a lawyer and an activist. So I come here in the power of the Almighty God.
So she's the one who set it up. She's the one who organized everything. And she's the one that led the effort to protest in this manner.
For righteousness, truth, and justice.
Is this the gentleman you were explaining to?
No, he's one of us.
Okay. Yeah.
It goes back and forth.
What did they say?
His connection was terrible the entire stream. It's not me. His connection was terrible the entire stream.
Well, I'm interested in being recorded.
Okay. Are you sure? You're a member of the church or you're
I'm not.
Oh, okay. I thought you were a church leader.
You'll see David Easterwood.
Okay. Who is the person that we should talk to? Is there a pastor or something?
They might have run away.
All right, we'll see if we can find him. I'm gonna talk to the pastor. Let's see if I can talk to him. Let's go over here. Hi, how are you? Hi. Let's see if we can talk to the pastor.
It gets better, but his connection is terrible. Let's fast forward to the interview with the pastor.
pastor of the church.
Our church had gathered for worship, which we do every Sunday, and we were interrupted by this group of protesters.
Yeah.
We asked them to leave, and they obviously have not left.
Yeah. So. What do you think of this?
I mean, this is unacceptable. It's shameful. It's shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship. So.
But there were folks who will say,
I have to take care of my flock.
Okay, but listen, we live in there's a constitution in the First Amendment to freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest.
Yeah. We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus because that's the hope of these cities. That's the hope of the world is Jesus Christ.
I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me though.
We're here to worship Jesus.
Yes.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Okay. That's why we're here.
Okay.
That's what we're about.
Don't you think Jesus would be understanding
we're about
and love these folks?
We're about spreading the love of Jesus.
But did you try to talk to them as a Christian?
No one is willing to talk.
Okay.
I have to take care of my church and my family, so I asked that you actually would also leave this building.
You don't want us to chronicle what happened?
Unless you're here to worship.
I'm always worship. I'm a Christian.
We're here to worship.
Yeah.
We're here to worship. Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So that's one of the pastors of the church, and it's kind of loud, so I can't hear him. But they're still there. And then, pardon me, sir. Sorry. Do you mind if we talk to you? No. What do you think of this? I thought you said no.
What I'll tell you is that there are varying arrays of views on the political situation here. That's what I'll tell you.
What do you mean by that?
I'm going to leave it at that. But there's varying array of views in this church.
So it's so chaotic in there at this moment. So obviously everyone's screaming. The protesters are screaming and yelling and chanting. At the same time, the church turned up the worship music. It sounds like to the max. And it's very chaotic in there at this moment. So he's walking around interviewing the people of the congregation. This guy didn't really say too much. He pretty much said like, yo, some people agree with what's going on with ICE. Some people don't agree within this church. That's pretty much what he said. He didn't really say too much. There was another interview that he had. He spoke to somebody. Let me see if I can find it. He spoke to an older gentleman, and I thought they had a really good conversation. This guy right here. So he spoke to this gentleman, and at this point, it's pretty much beginning to clear out. So the church is almost empty at this point. And then he runs into this individual who was a part of the congregation of the church.
And they've interrupted our worship. This is a house of peace, and we try to proclaim that. And this stirs division and rancor. And in the end, it's not helpful. Ultimately, I believe they've lost. They've emptied a house of worship. Everybody's gone home. Their point has been proven worthless. And so, in the end, I think they lose. But more importantly, if I was to break into any of their houses uninvited, cause derision and upset according to their values, I would be kicked out ultimately. It's not a good way. I feel violated. I feel interrupted. I feel angry.
So you said all need to be held accountable for this crime. What do you think needs to be happened specifically? What action do you think needs to happen specifically? I'm just curious to know what you think.
May I ask you something? When you were saying if you had showed up at their house, they're saying that people are showing up at houses where they're citizens or without due process and breaking and entering the house. One that we saw, I've been watching from New York, with a battering ram into someone's private property, and there's no recourse. There's no, you understand what I'm saying?
This is all part of a much larger dialogue, in my opinion. On one side are people who watched a previous administration bring 12 million people in over the course of 4 years, and many of them undocumented, many of them criminals, etc. This is another administration's corrective. Now, whether you agree with the policies or procedures, I think I could actually be sympathetic to some of the things where there have been
It's so
challenges to and decent. At the same time, these are
It's so chaotic. It's so chaotic. So, that's very interesting. So you said that they need to go to jail, and but ultimately you hope that they repent and come to Jesus. And then you also said that God is about law and order. That's a very interesting point. Put a pin in that, because that was also my point. But I think it's in a much different context than what you might think.
what are called targeted interventions by ICE to keep the American people safe.
If I respectfully may interject here, I've been out reporting on a lot of these, and they're not targeted. There are no warrants signed by a judge, let me finish. And they're American citizens, many of them. Most of the people that they detain don't have criminal convictions or criminal records.
I'm not going to get into the weeds.
But you should know that, though. Don't you think that's part of it?
Yes, and I could also show you many opposing sides where we're also picking up the very criminals that have put Americans in danger. And I'm not saying it's pretty. I'm not saying it's not messy. I'm not saying it couldn't be better. I'm saying this is a part of a much larger dialogue in which one administration caused a great deal of chaos and havoc and danger for American citizens, and another is trying to correct that.
Do you believe that? Why honestly,
Okay.
let me talk to you just on the
You're not
facts.
a journalist.
Yes, I am. I want to give you the facts.
No.
Did you know that undocumented people and immigrants commit far less crime than American citizens?
We're done here.
You said, so protesters who were against the ICE operation agents are upset because there is a pastor who also works with ICE. I'm not a fan of ICE either, but I don't see exactly how they were wrong. And the reason why I say that is because there was a man that went into Jamal Bryant's church and exercised his freedom of speech as well. But he withdrew. It's a typo, I'm assuming. They definitely could have sent a better message.
We're done here.
Then natural-born Americans. You won't listen.
If you could ask,
I'm giving you the facts. It is.
Give me facts. I would have a conversation.
But I can respond to you.
No, we're done.
Did Jesus stand with the oppressed?
Because he doesn't want to listen to facts. That's the interesting thing about this, is that they won't listen to facts.
No.
You won't, because
when you pose as a journalist,
I am a journalist. Journalist gives facts.
And then you start correcting me with facts, and don't have.
You shouldn't hear the facts.
Of course, I should hear the facts.
Most of the people who are picked up
but will
are
you
not.
Give me the facts on both sides.
That is the facts on both sides. Most of the people who are picked up and are detained are not convicted. They have no criminal convictions. They have no criminal records. None.
Okay. I think there was another part I want to show you. I mean, you kind of get the gist of what happened, right? And then he sits and he talks to the leader one last time out here.
It's not a place where you can have a pastor masquerading as the director for the field office of ICE in St. Paul.
Are you sure he's in it?
If you go to City's Church website, you will see him listed as a pastor. And the moment I mentioned his name, I tried to say, I am a reverend. You asked for the Lord to put your house in order. The moment I mentioned David Easterwood, he tried to shut me down. So you can go to their website and see David Easterwood listed, David Easterwood, and he's all over the court decision that just came out in with Judge Melendez, where the ACLU filed suit on behalf of 6 Minnesota residents because of the abuse by ICE and them violating people's constitutional laws. He also appears on C-SPAN with Christy Nome. That is the same guy listed as a pastor here at City's Church.
So what happens next, Nikima? What do you think this does?
So, I mean, there's a lot going on here, but the obvious thing is the fact that they are upset with everything that's going on with ICE and how they're moving about Minneapolis. So, that's the primary reason why they went up in there, to protest in that way, according to them, right? Because the pastor is supposedly associated with ICE. The second thing is, she said that she's a minister of some sort. According to her, she said that she's a minister. And then Don Lemon also says that he's a Christian. So there's a spiritual component to it as well, to where they believe that they're calling out and they believe that they're exposing this church for being false. So that's the other component to it as well that I don't see too many people talking about. There was a very weird dialogue that happened with Nicki Minaj. And I don't know why people are defending what she's saying. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me as to why she chimed in and said what she said. I mean, she could have said something. I don't have a problem with her chiming in, but what she said and how she said it, I don't see how that's beneficial to this conversation. But Nicki Minaj said some crazy stuff, and then Don Lemon responded to it. Let's pull that clip up real quick.
So people have been asking me about responding to Nicki Minaj's unhinged, homophobic tweet about me. I usually don't respond to this stuff, but let me just say this. Nicki Minaj.
Did you read what she said? Hold on.
So
I don't know what he's going to say. I haven't watched this video yet. But, if you see what she said, I'm assuming you took some time to read that. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to repeat it. But I'm not understanding why she said what she said. It doesn't make any sense. Like, a lot of these individuals, and, Nicki Minaj, she came out and she said that she believes in Jesus and that she's a Christian, and then she stands with, Christians in Nigeria and whatnot. But then you turn around and then you say this to him, even if you don't agree with what he did. And I don't agree with what he did either. But you can't sit here and say these type of words and contribute with this type of conduct to this conversation. It's just not beneficial. It doesn't do anything. All it does is continue the division. And if you look at a lot of what's happening, there's really no solution because everybody thinks that they're on the right side of history. And then when you add the spiritual component, nobody really wants to sit down and actually read the Bible and actually try to understand what it says in terms of how we should think about immigration, how we should think about ICE, and how we should think about this whole political scene and environment that's happening right now. Nobody really wants to sit down and really dive into it. A lot of people have opinions. A lot of people have their own personal interpretations, but nobody's really hitting it on the mark. But anyway, let's see what he said. I have no idea what he says.
People have been asking me about responding to Nicki Minaj's unhinged, homophobic tweet about me. I usually don't respond to this stuff, but let me just say this. Nicki Minaj, stop talking about shit for which you know nothing about. This is out of your depth, by the way, and you are a homophobic bigot. You don't care about African Americans. You're not an African American. From what I know, you are reportedly an undocumented citizen, so you should be deported under Donald Trump's rules. And the other thing is that your family members, you have one family member who is reportedly a sex offender, the other family member, your husband or whatever, a sex offender is your husband, and one of them is reportedly a pedophile. And you have nerve to talk about me and what you think that I do? Nicki Minaj, get a life. Stop being a pick-me. You should have put a pick-me doll on that damn tweet instead of a Chucky doll, because you are nothing but a pick-me. And I choose not to pick you. And so should black people, and so should gay people. Shouldn't buy your music. Clock that.
These are just children, to be honest with you. Because it's like, okay, she says something and she goes low, and Don's like, okay, let me go even lower than that. I don't see the benefit of having that type of dialogue and that type of discourse and going back and forth in that manner. I don't see how that's productive. I don't see how that's doing anything aside from continuing to stir up even more division. And these are two individuals, despite how you might feel about it. And here's the thing. I think, and I said this before, the true mark of a Christian is an individual who displays a struggle against sin and the ability to overcome it. That's what I think is the true mark of a Christian. Not somebody who says, you know what, this sin that I'm experiencing, this temptation that I'm going through, I'm going to allow that to become a lifestyle. And I'm going to allow that to essentially overrule what the Bible says. So hopefully you can kind of read between the lines. But these are two individuals who call themselves Christians. But yet we're sitting here having this type of conversation and this type of discourse publicly online. For what purpose? It makes no sense. It honestly makes no sense. It makes no sense. There was a, who was it? Oh, hold on. Let me pull this up.
All ICE wants to do is get them out of our country, bring them to prisons and jails and mental institutions from where they came. That's all they want to do. They're patriots, and they have to be abused by guys like Don Lemon, who's a loser, lightweight. I saw him the way he walked in that church. It was terrible. I have such respect for that pastor. He was so calm. He was so nice. He was just accosted. What they did in that church was horrible yesterday. Look at this. 24 convictions. 24 times convicted. They're not charges, these are convictions. So he comes from outside the country. Do you think he's going to be good here? He's convicted 24 times, he's going to be good here, right? It doesn't work that way. It's a man murderer. It's one of many. One of many. All they want to do is get him out. They want to take him out of our country. And we're met with paid agitators and insurrectionists, troublemakers. They're paid. You know, when the woman was shot, and I felt terribly about that. And I understand both sides of it. But when she was shot, there was another woman that was screaming shame, 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 right? You saw it. So loud. She was like a professional opera singer. She was so loud. And
So I heard something that said that Trump was going to pursue legal action against Don Lemon and against everybody who was involved in, what took place. It says that Donald Trump co-signs. Oh, that's what I was looking for. I'm sorry. It's on TikTok. Let me pull it up. This right here. It says, now this is what Trump retweeted. So somebody put this out, Trump retweeted it. It says a small group of elderly ladies were protesting an abortion clinic and were giving 40 years in prison for violating the FACE Act. I would like to see the same kind of sentence for Don Lemon and the people who broke into that church and did that during the service. And then Donald Trump retweeted this tweet from this woman. So a lot of people think that there's going to be some legal action that's going to come. I wouldn't be surprised if there is. You know what's so interesting? Here's what's so interesting. I saw this graphic. It's from the U.S. Office of Immigration Statistic. Now, this is August 2014. So this is some time ago. But I think it's still interesting because at that point in time, Obama deported 2.5 million people. That was leaps and bounds higher than anybody before him had deported, right? Millions of people. And who was his VP? Joe Biden, right? So there's millions of individuals who were deported under Obama. There's millions of individuals who are currently being deported under Trump. I don't necessarily think it's about the numbers. Because like I said, Obama and Biden deported millions of people. It's not really about the number. It's about the narrative. It's about the tone. It's about the moral framing of the situation. And that's the part that's so interesting, because on both sides of the equation, left and right, under both administrations, millions of people were deported. Right? On both sides, left and right, under both administrations, left and right, Biden, Obama, Trump, ICE was existent. Like, ICE was present. ICE has been around for like 20 years. It's not like Trump created ICE. In fact, if you look at it, Obama was really the one who really amped things up when it came to the implementation of ICE. Obama was really the one that put a lot of resources into it. But during that time, you didn't really hear anybody talking about abolish ICE or anything like that, right? And I think it's interesting because when you look at it, Obama and Biden, when you look at how they spoke about immigration, it was very compassionate. It was very compassionate. It was a much different tone than how you see Donald Trump speak about immigration. And when you see Donald Trump speak about immigration, he says all these wild things. Even the fact that whatever he said about Don Lemon, he just called him a fool or whatever. It's just like, bro, these are another individual who's supposed to be a Christian. Donald Trump, another individual who calls himself a Christian. He's supposed to be a Christian. But yet in your conduct, in your speech, it's hard to tell. It's very hard to tell. So it's no wonder why people are so upset, because the narrative that he has created around immigration has been so negative. But like I said, when you look at Obama, when you look at Biden, you still had millions of people who were being deported. Now, how many people came into the country illegally under Biden and under Obama? I don't know that number. I'm sure it's a lot greater than what's happening right now under the Trump administration. So I don't know that number in terms of how many people came in and how many people were deported. I don't know what that looks like. But when you just look at the facts of how many people have been deported under both administrations, there's been millions of people. But the difference is the narrative. The difference is how you frame it. The difference is the tone and how you talk about human beings. And I think that for a large portion of the narrative and the conversation that Trump has around immigration, it's just been very terrible how he's painted the picture. Now, of course, there's individuals who are doing some wild and crazy stuff. But then on the flip side, you know, you have people who have come into the country. And I get the whole argument in terms of like, well, if they've come into the country illegally, they're breaking the law. I understand that. But you look at Obama and how he handled it, and I don't agree with everything that Obama did. I don't agree with most of the stuff that Obama did. But the way that he was able to frame it in the conversation, it was much better than what you see Trump display and how he speaks about it. And it's interesting because Obama was still deporting millions of people, but he didn't receive that same type of backlash. You understand what I'm trying to say? Because Trump says things like they're invading the country, right? He calls them bad hombres. He calls them, you know, SHIT whole countries. Literally calls them shithole countries. Excuse my language, but that's what he says. And then on top of that, he says he's a Christian. So of course you're going to incite that type of negative response from the people who are politically opposed to you, because you continue to use this language and you continue to stir them up and make them upset even more on this type of topic, which is very sensitive. You continue to stir the pot. And this is supposed to be a believer. You understand what I'm trying to say? But it's like, let me give you an example. This is 11 years ago.
I believe that the best way to solve this problem is by working together to pass that kind of common sense law. But until that happens, there are actions I have the legal authority to take as president, the same kinds of actions taken by Democratic and Republican presidents before me, that will help make our immigration system more fair and more just. Tonight, I'm announcing those actions. First, we'll build on our progress at the border with additional resources for our law enforcement personnel so that they can stem the flow of illegal crossings and speed the return of those who do cross over. Second, I'll make it easier and faster for high-skilled immigrants, graduates, and entrepreneurs to stay and contribute to our economy, as so many business leaders have proposed.
So he said they're going to beef up the border. They're going to put millions of dollars of resources into the border, if not more, into the border to beef it up, right? And then he also said, but if you're somebody who has entered the country illegally, and if you have something to offer us, if you have a valuable skill, then we'll make it easier for you to stay, right? But then listen to what else he says.
Third, we'll take steps to deal responsibly with the millions of undocumented immigrants who already live in our country. I want to say more about this third issue because it generates the most passion and controversy. Even as we are a nation of immigrants, we're also a nation of laws. Undocumented workers broke our immigration laws, and I believe that they must be held accountable, especially those who may be dangerous. That's why over the past 6 years, deportations of criminals are up 80%. And that's why we're going to keep focusing enforcement resources on actual threats to our security. Felons, not families. Criminals, not children. Gang members, not a mom who's working hard to provide for her kids. We'll prioritize, just like law enforcement does every day. But even as we focus on deporting criminals, the fact is millions of immigrants in every state, of every race and nationality, still live here illegally. And let's be honest, tracking down, rounding up, and deporting millions of people isn't realistic. Anyone who's
Although that's still what they did.
Suggests otherwise isn't being straight with you. It's also not who we are as Americans. After all, most of these immigrants have been here a long time. They work hard, often in tough, low-paying jobs. They support their families. They worship at our churches. Many of their kids are American-born or spent most of their lives here. And their hopes, dreams, and patriotism are just like ours. As my predecessor, President Bush, once put it, they are a part of American life.
If you really listen to what he said, and if you really think about some of the stuff that Trump says and how Trump views immigration, this is going to sound crazy. They're really not that far off. They're really, and call me crazy, and I'm just basing it just on what he just said during this speech and what we've heard and what we've seen Trump say about immigration. And I'm also basing it on the numbers of how many millions of people have been deported under each administration, right? If you listen, in my opinion, they're really not that far off. The obvious difference is how he approached that conversation, his tone, recognizing that although laws are being broken, they're still human beings. And just the overall way that he spoke with grace in that manner. But here's the thing, even if Trump had better PR, like even if he had even if he displayed better conduct in terms of his speech and his tone on this conversation, I don't think it would matter. It still wouldn't matter. It still wouldn't matter because the division is already built into the system. The division is already built into the system. We're forced to pick a side regardless. You have to pick left or right, red or blue. You have to. You're forced to pick a side. You can't even really join the conversation unless you pick a side, right? Otherwise, you're sitting on the fence, which is like a lot of people would say is what I'm doing, is sitting on the fence. And so your opinion is immediately not valued because you don't belong to either one of the sides. So the division is already baked into the system. But I think the thing is, and this is going back to, and I forget what your name was, but you had spoke about law and order. I think the fact of the matter is, no matter what side of the political spectrum that you fall on, I think that we can all agree that there should be immigration law. I think we can all agree on that. Now, to what extent is a whole nother story. That's a whole nother story. But I think that we can agree that there should be laws as it relates to immigration and the border. And that's not just for the U.S., but that's just every country, right? At least I think we should agree. But to what extent, that's a whole different story. Especially, but here's the thing. Going back to what you said, I think that we can all agree that there should be law and order. I think that we can all agree that there should be law and order, especially if you're a Christian. Especially if you're a Christian. Because if you read the Bible, you will understand from the very first page of the Bible that God is a God of order. That's very clear. God is a God of order. That is extremely clear. I mean, you even look at it like, and there's so many examples. Which one do you want to go to? There's so many examples. Think about this. As much as people try to deny it, science actually proves the existence of God. As much as people try to deny it, right? As much as people try to deny it. And I was reading a commentary and it said, the more science discovers about creation, the more we learn about God. The more science discovers about creation, the more we learn about God. There is so much order in creation. There has to be. There is so much order in creation. There's so much order within our own bodies. If there's any disorder within our bodies, things go wrong. We get sick. We pass, you know what I'm saying? God is a God of order. Look at the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. That's one of the most clear examples. Look at the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, all distinct persons, but they function in perfect unity with order. Now, did Trump inherit a massive problem from the previous administration as it related to immigration? Yes, he did. He did. He stepped into a problem as it related to immigration. But I don't think he made it any better simply based on the way that he continued to frame it. I don't think he made it any better. And then if you also think about, because like I said, Trump did not create ICE. Trump was not the one who created ICE. Obama utilized ICE to a very high extent. They were deporting millions of people. Do you think when Obama was deporting millions of people, do you think that they were just willfully just saying, okay, you got me. You found me. You got me. I'll leave. Here. here. You think it was just like easy peasy? No. It was calculated. They were doing the same stuff. The difference is there's not a whole lot of order right now with what you see going on with how ICE is moving. There's not a whole lot of order with how ICE is moving. They're moving extremely reckless. I don't even understand, and this blows my mind. I don't even understand how somebody can be in a position to where you're reaching around a windshield and firing a shot into somebody's face. I don't even understand how you get into that position. I don't even understand logistically from an organizational standpoint. I don't understand who is on the scene. I don't understand who is controlling the scene. I don't understand who's supervising the scene. I don't understand how they let it get out of hand to that point. How did it even get to that point? And you could say, oh, well, you know, she was acting crazy and she shouldn't have been that. Okay, cool. She was acting crazy and she shouldn't have been in that position. Okay, I got it. But did nobody on the team have any type of foresight to see like, yo, this is potentially going to go bad? How about we take a step back? How about we reassess? How about we reconsider our priorities? And how about we establish some safety within this operation? Like, there's so much disorder right now. And on top of that, the narrative and the tone and the way that he's speaking about these individuals, it's like, of course you're going to have this level of protest. Of course people are going to be upset. Am I saying that that's okay? No, I'm not saying that that's okay. But I'm simply saying like, yo, there's a lot of division. And the division is baked into the system. The division is baked into the system. And by the way that we're speaking about it and how we're acknowledging people, you're only making it worse in a lot of conditions, in a lot of cases. You're only making it worse. So like I said, as Christians, we understand that God is a God of order. We should have laws and we should have order. We should. We should want that. And we should want that because, you know, ultimately, you're going to see a lot more people in positions to not be harmed if we have proper laws and proper order in place. But right now it's like, bro, it's just like there's so much going on. And it's everyone continues just to pile on to the conversation. Everyone continues just to add negativity to the conversation. Everyone continues just to add filth to the conversation on both sides. I'm not saying any one side is, you know, to blame necessarily, because everybody's contributing from what I see equally to this conversation. And we're just growing and growing and growing in division. And it's becoming more and more clear and apparent every single day. It is. But it is super interesting when you think about it. It's like, bro, Obama was getting millions of people up out of here. I saw a story that under Obama's administration, there was somebody who got a traffic ticket. He was an illegal immigrant. He got a traffic ticket, got pulled over. He got deported because of that traffic ticket. And then he went home. And then like a couple months later, he got murdered. It's like, it's like so many things. It's so many stories. And these are, and we're talking about millions of people who were deported under his administration, right? But you don't really see that same level of outrage. You don't see that same, you don't see it. You didn't see that same level of outrage. Nobody was saying abolish ICE. Nobody was saying that. But yet he was very tough on immigration. Now, he did set up systems, and here's the thing, and this goes back to the tone and the framing. Like, he did set up systems. I forget what it's called. But I forget what it's called exactly, but my coworker was on it, where my coworker was from Mexico illegally. She was illegally here from Mexico, but she was allowed to stay temporarily if she had a job, and she had to reapply every 2 years, right? So he did set up that system to where a lot of people felt safer in that regard. But it wasn't like Obama was giving them it wasn't immunity. It wasn't like you were a citizen. It's just we're delaying your deportation process. We're delaying it. So essentially what's happening is now you're becoming less of a priority on our list. And we're going to say that we're going to more so focus on violent criminals and people who are openly dangerous to society. Right? So he earned a lot of good grace and favor with individuals because he delayed their process, although he didn't make them citizens, but he delayed their process of being deported. So he deprioritized them. Whereas that's what Trump also said initially, was that they were going to focus on the most violent of the individuals and the people who were most threats to society. But now you see some stories and you see some different press and you see different media, and it's honestly hard to believe a lot of stuff, but you see some different stories of just children and kids and mothers just being deported. It's like, bro, I get it. They entered illegally, but the priority, it seems to be a little off. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's why people are like so on edge and so upset. And also something that people don't really talk about, the systems that they use to identify a lot of these individuals that they're trying to deport. A lot of these systems are built by Palantir. Palantir is the largest surveillance government contractor in the United States. So it's almost like you see this test phase of what could eventually be a system where the government just can scan your face and have all this information about you in the blink of an eye. It's actually very insane, the type of technology that they're using right now with ICE. It's very insane. I saw a video of one of the ICE officers. He had this like special like phone, and it might have just been like a case, but it looked like a crazy like special phone, like some Men in Black type stuff. And he scanned this lady's face, and then he did a little bit of, typing on his phone, and then they just left. I'm just like, bro, I don't know. You said, where's Obama now? You said the government already has our face scanned. Yeah, but have you looked into what Palantir is involved with from a surveillance standpoint? It's not just the fact that they can scan your face, but then they can also trace that to your address. They can trace that to your cell phone activity. And then I also saw some stuff to where they're intercepting the cell phone signals. So if somebody's making a call or if somebody's sending a text message, they have the ability to intercept it before it gets to the cell towers, and then they send it off to the cell towers. And they can essentially tie that back to your identity based on the face scan that they have. It's just some very wild technology. And I'm sure they have even more advanced levels of technology that I don't even know about. But it does make you think. kind of where all this is going. And I don't want to get too down the weeds from like a conspiracy standpoint, but, you know, I think everybody reads the Bible here. I think everybody understands the systems in place that are to come. And I think it's very interesting. But I will say this, no matter what you think from a law standpoint, from an immigration standpoint, you do have to stop and acknowledge that we're all human beings. I think you do have to stop and acknowledge that. I understand laws are being broken, and I'm not defending it. I'm not making excuses for it. But you do understand that we have all committed crimes against God, right? Eternally. We have all committed crimes against God eternally. You do understand that, right? So I feel like we get way too caught up and we get way too defensive when it comes to this conversation. And we forget to acknowledge that we are all human beings, that we have all fallen short of the glory of God. I think we forget that. I'm not saying that we should just bypass law and order, but I'm saying don't allow the hatred to get to the heart level, and don't allow it to harden your heart to the point that you're unable to recognize the humanity. That's what I'm saying. Because that's what the world wants you to do. That's how the system is set up, to continue to divide. There is no solution under this current system. It doesn't matter who's in office. There is no true solution under this current system because it's a man-made system. There is no solution. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who's in office. It's a man-made system. There's no solution. The only solution comes from above. The only solution comes from God. That's the only solution. That's it. But we keep thinking that we can come up with the solution. We keep thinking that we can solve the problem. We keep thinking that we can make all these different systems that are going to make it easier, and no, not everyone. There's not a world where you're going to have somebody come into office where everybody's going to be happy. There's always going to be division. There's always going to be divide. It's baked into the system. So I get it. It's hard. It's hard not to get wrapped up into that. But don't allow yourself to become blind. Don't pledge your allegiance to a political party. Don't pledge your allegiance to a political figure who was ultimately a human. Don't pledge your allegiance to those individuals to the point where you become so blind that you're unwilling to call out their faults, because mistakes are being made. Mistakes are being made. But some people are just so unwilling to call out the mistakes because you've pledged your allegiance to that party. You can't even say when they do something wrong. Like, why is that? You should have the common sense. You should have the critical thinking ability. You should have the discernment to say, you know what? That was not the right decision. It wasn't the right decision. And I'm not justifying the fact that they ran up in that church. But here's the thing also, I don't know anything about that church. I don't know anything about that church. I'm not saying it's okay to run up in random churches. And I'm not saying that they were acting in an unbiblical manner. But I don't know anything about that church. I don't know anything about that pastor. I don't know anything about what he believes in. I don't know anything about his theology. I don't know anything about him. But I'm not going to sit here and fall for the trap to where you're trying to get me to be enraged about this situation of them running up in that church. They shouldn't have done that. They shouldn't have done that. But at the same time, bro, there's a lot of crazy stuff that's going on. And there's a lot of real trauma and real persecution that is happening all around the world. There's a lot of real persecution that is happening all around the world of Christians. Hear what I'm saying. I'm not downplaying their actions. I'm not defending their actions. But at the same time, there are literally people who are being burned alive in their sleep because they profess faith in Jesus Christ. That is really happening. There are thousands of bodies being buried in the grave because individuals have faith in Jesus Christ and they're being persecuted because of that. Here's what I'm doing. The only thing that I'm asking you to do is simply zoom out. That's all I'm asking you to do. If anything, if you take anything away from what I just said, and I know it's a lot, and I'm not claiming to be the most politically knowledgeable individual. In fact, I'm probably the least politically knowledgeable individual that you will come across in your life. But I will say this, I want you to zoom out. I want you to attempt to see things how God sees things. And I'm not saying that you're going to be perfect, but ask God to give you eyes like his eyes so you can zoom out and you can actually have a bigger perspective of what's going on. Because oftentimes we get so laser focused on the news, we get so laser focused on these headlines that we're unable to actually zoom out and process things from a higher level. And this is not on some like, you know, I'm awake and you're asleep. It's not that type of conversation. I'm just saying, try to have a bigger perspective, a larger perspective of everything that's going on in total. And don't allow stuff like this to sway your emotions to the point that you're starting to hate people, to the point that you're putting your faith and trust in a system or in human beings who are flawed, who are sinful. You know what I'm trying to say? You said, I'm going to be honest, I knew nothing about any of these videos. I was so confused. I'm not tuned into the media. Purposely shut off a lot of things because of it, but I guess I've been missing out too at the same time. It's just so much. It's so much, and I need a clear head. Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. Because once you get into this cycle, it's so hard to clear your thoughts of what's going on. I'm not saying that you should be completely oblivious. I'm not saying that you should be completely checked out. But you know what? Honestly, and some people aren't going to like this, sometimes you got to check out. We're only human beings. Do you think we were meant to process this much information on a daily basis? Of course not. Of course not. We were not meant to process this much information on a daily basis. Sometimes it'll literally drive you insane. Sometimes it'll literally push you to the point of psychosis. And it's hard to get out of that cycle because it's so addicting. It's so addicting. It's so sensational. It's so like, and this stuff is really happening, but just the way that it's being portrayed and the way that it's being pointed, the way that it's being painted, it's hard to turn off. It's hard to look away from. So sometimes, depending on the season that you're in, depending on what's going on with you spiritually, sometimes you need to check out. And sometimes you need to say, you know what, God, I don't know all of what's going on. I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the solutions, but I know you do. And I'm going to trust you, and I'm going to seek you, and I'm going to prioritize you. That is the best course of action, in my opinion. because we know stuff is going to get crazy. We know that we are living in the presence of sin. And you know the only way that that's going to be fixed is for this world to pass away. That's the only solution, is for this world to pass away. Because it's like, we're not even looking for solutions to the sin anymore. We're just looking for ways to monetize it. So people say that they want, like the media, for example, the media says that they, well, I don't even think the media says this, but you would think that we would want the tension and the drama and the negativity to be toned down and for things to be positive, right? But in reality, that don't make no money. Positivity don't make no money. You know what I'm saying? So it's like the same people who are reporting on it, the same people who are covering it, deep down inside, and maybe not so deep down inside for some people, I think they're excited that they have something to report on. I think they're excited that they have something to monetize. And that's a very dangerous game to play, but that's a world that we live in. You said my mom advised me not to really focus on the news because you will go crazy and get stressed over everything. But spiritually, I got to find who has my heart right now. And this is what I'm trying to say. I don't want to obsess over it, but I don't want to be completely blind to what's going on. I don't want to ignore what's happening because my heart does hurt for people. But I think that's a part of the problem. It's like we're so overly burdened. And what are the real solutions? Only God knows the real solutions. It's a tricky conversation, I'll be honest with you. It's not an easy conversation. There's no like right thing to say when it comes to this kind of stuff.